Hey everyone, so it's time for another Hockey 101 video, and today we're going to talk about different types of defensemen. But before we get to that, I just want to quickly say if you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. As long as you're a fan of hockey and a fan of the NHL, there are videos here for you. If you're just getting into hockey or just trying to learn about it, I'm going to be doing this series for as long as I can, on as many different topics as I possibly can. So please hit that subscribe button, and I'm sure there are videos here that you will enjoy. Now, different types of defensemen. If you're watching hockey, you'll probably hear them talk about an offensive defenseman, defensive defenseman, or a two-way / all-around defenseman. And those terms are used a lot. But you may not know what they mean, especially if you're just starting getting into hockey. So, an offensive defenseman, or OFD, is a defenseman whose offensive skills outshine his defensive skills. They're generally players who are they're good skaters, they have a hard, heavy shot, they can pass the puck really well, and they're good puck handlers. So these are guys who are not necessarily bad in their own end. Some of them can be defensive liabilities, but some of them are also solid defensively, but their offensive skills really outshine their defensive skills. Someone that I think is I would say Erik Karlsson is a great example of someone I would call an offensive defenseman. Now, Karlsson is one of the best defensemen in the league and a Norris Trophy candidate, so he's obviously not a liability in his own end, but his offensive skills are so good that they really outshine anything he does defensively. Torrey Krug on the Bruins is another guy I would call an offensive defenseman. He's not terrible defensively at all. He's very solid in his own end, but he racks up a lot of points, and his offensive abilities outshine what he does defensively. Some of you, if you're a little older, might remember Marc-Andre Bergeron. He was very much an offensive defenseman. Bergeron played on numerous teams throughout his career, but by the end of his career in Tampa Bay, he was being dressed as a seventh defenseman strictly to play the point on the power play. He was very much a liability in his own end. He was definitely defensively deficient, but his offensive skills were so good that they wanted him out there as on the power play and to bring offense for the team. Colin Miller is a guy playing in Vegas now who's kind of like that. He definitely has some deficiencies in his own end, but he's very good offensively. Miller's a great skater. He can pass the puck well. He has a very heavy shot. That's the type of player that I'm talking about, that they're talking about when they say offensive defenseman. A two-way defenseman or an all-around defenseman is a player who is equally good at both ends of the ice. That doesn't mean they're exceptional at both ends of the ice. Some players are. Drew Doughty is someone that I would call a two-way defenseman. He's very good defensively and very good offensively. He is one of the absolute best defensemen in the league. That's why he makes $11 million a year. Victor Hedman is another guy I would call a two-way defenseman. His offensive game isn't so good that it stands out from his defensive game, and he's not a defensive defenseman either because he brings a good amount of offense to the team. So guys like that are really two-way defensemen, and I think there's a large number of players in the league I would call two-way defensemen. They don't have to be exceptional at both ends of the ice, but they have to be sort of equal at both ends of the ice. I think there are a lot of guys who play fairly similar at a fairly similar level in the defensive zone as well as the offensive zone. And lastly, we have defensive defensemen, or DFD. These are players that really don't bring you a lot of offense, but they're very good defensively playing in their own end. These guys tend to be bigger defensemen, not as good of skaters, but very physical. they can shut down the other team's offense very well. They really, guys like Adam McQuaid in Boston, Derek Engelland in Vegas. Those are guys that I would call defensive defensemen. They're not going to, look at McQuaid. He scores like 1 goal a year, gives you, 5, 6, maybe 7 points on the season, but he shuts down the other team's players, and he's very good in his own end. He kills penalties, and he focuses on his play in the defensive zone. Derek Engelland, same thing. A little more offense from Engelland, because Engelland, I think, is an overall better player, but he's still largely known for his defensive play. They're really the opposite of an offensive defenseman. A defensive defenseman, their play in their defensive zone, their own end, outshines their play in the offensive end. And throughout the history of the NHL, there have been a lot of very, very good defensive defensemen. You don't see as many strictly defensive guys anymore as the game has become more speed and skill based. These big physical defensemen aren't around as much, and you see a lot more offensive defensemen because teams are looking for offense not only from forwards but from the back end as well nowadays. So there are many players that fall under these categories throughout the NHL. Offensive defensemen are, I think, a little bit harder to come by, especially good ones. Good offensive defensemen are very hard to come by in hockey. And when you do get one, they generally get big contracts because they rack up a lot of points. I would say most players fall under the two-way defenseman category. They're just pretty equal at both ends of the ice. And then defensive defensemen aren't as common as they used to be, but they're still there, especially when you look at bottom pair defensemen, 5th and 6th guys. There's a lot of guys who strictly focus on their defensive zone and really don't bring a whole lot to the table offensively, but do their job defensively. So those are the 3 categories that you'll generally hear being talked about defensemen. And, there are many players that fall under these categories. And, if you're ever watching hockey or listening to a game and you hear someone mention that, this is the kind of player they are, this is what they're talking about. Again, examples of offensive guys are Erik Karlsson, Torrey Krug, John Klingberg in Dallas, I would call an offensive defenseman. Two-way players are very good all-around guys. Drew Doughty, Victor Hedman, Roman Josi. Generally, your top tier of NHL defensemen are going to fall under this two-way because there is no deficiencies in their game. They are elite defensemen. They're great at both ends of the ice. The only elite level defenseman that I would call something else is Erik Karlsson, because his offensive skills are so good. They're so superior that even though he's developed pretty nicely as a defensive player, his offensive skills just blow his defensive play away. And then lastly, defensive defensemen, they're bigger bodies, more physical players. Guys like Adam McQuaid, Roman Polak, Derek Engelland. They don't give you a whole lot offensively, but they really make up for it with their defensive zone play, and they can really shut down the other team. So those are the 3 main categories that defensemen fall under, and now you know what they're talking about if you ever are watching hockey and hear, defensemen categorized like this. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you found this video informative and helpful. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media, check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are in the description below. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing, and I hope that these new, teaching informative videos that I'm doing will reach a whole new audience of new hockey fans or people who want to learn more about the sport. And thanks again for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you guys soon.